When you talk about the pancreas, pancreas is associated with the digestive system as well as the endocrine system. So it is also called as a mixed gland or endocrine gland. The outer part of the pancreas is responsible for the production of digestive juices like pancreatic juice, and inner part consists of three types of cells called as alpha, beta, gamma cells. Alpha cells are for the production of insulin, beta cells are production for the glucagon, and the delta cells produces the somatostatin. So generally when you alpha cells produces glucagon, and while the beta cells produces insulin. So because of this hormone, the blood sugar level is maintained in the body, and generally glucagon acts mainly on the liver cells and stimulates the gluconeolysis, that is conversion of the excess glucose into the sugar, animal glycogen. So it is also called as hyperglycemic hormone as a result of this. And here generally when you talk about the insulin is a peptide hormone which plays a major role in the regulation of the glucose homeostasis. And insulin acts mainly on the liver cells and adipocyte cells and convert and enhances the cellular glucose uptake and utilization. So when there is a deficiency of insulin, you can see that many patients will be suffering from a sugar condition that is also called as diabetes mellitus. And diabetes insipidus is concerned to the vasopressin hormone, and which is excessive passage of urine. Now when you come on to the when a person is prolonged hyperglycemia leads to a complex disorder that is called as diabetes mellitus, that is excessive loss of glucose through the urine and not intake. Now coming on to the next gland called as the testis. Here testes are the male reproductive organs meant for production of spermatogonial cells. Already we have discussed related to this, but here the main hormone called as these are helpful in the production of reproductive hormones, and here this will produce the sperms. And coming on to the next one, ovary. When you talk about the ovaries are specifically to females, and they will be already you have come across these two terms in the elaborate study in the human reproduction. Now the hormones produced by the ovaries are estrogen and progesterone. Progesterone is generally more in the case of the pregnancy or in the luteal phase. And coming on to the testes are generally responsible for the production. Hormone is testosterone along with the other hormones produced in our body. Now coming on to the next one, hormones of other parts of the body which are not. Generally when you see onto this, apart from these the glands which are producing the hormones, some of our body parts like we can also see that heart is producing the atrial natriuretic factor. Already we are going to discuss that. And also a peptide hormone is produced by the juxtaglomerular cells of the kidney called as erythropoietin. And apart from that, gastrin, secretin and choleocytokinin is produced from the as well as gastric inhibitory peptide are produced in the intestine of our body. Apart from that, you can also see that sweat glands also produces certain types of hormones which are generally responsible for our body apart from in our body. And when you talk about the mechanism of hormone action, so there are two types of mechanisms which will be acting on that, called as So when you talk about the hormones, there are two types of hormone, four types of hormones. Some are called as peptide hormones or polypeptide hormones. When you talk about the peptide or polypeptide, the examples for this is insulin and glucagon produced from the, as well as the pituitary hormones and as well as the hypothalamic hormones. And coming on to the steroidal hormones, we see that there are two types of there are certain examples for the steroidal hormones like cortisol, testosterone, estradiol, and progesterone. That is mostly sexual hormones, including the cortex hormones, that is corticoids, and iodine containing iodothyroxines or iodohormones, that is thyroid, is the good example. It consists of T3 and T4 type of hormones, and there are certain hormones which are the derivatives of amino acids like amino acid derivatives, that is the adrenaline or epinephrine. Now when you talk onto this, will action or mode of action of these hormones, there will be two types of mechanisms. When you take onto this example, that is in the case of this is a primary messenger organism, that is the hormone FSH will directly act on the receptor cells of the ovarian cell membrane. As a result, for that it will be producing the effect and will be creating a response to that. The response will act on the cyclic AMP, which is a secondary messenger, and which in turn activates the biochemical process, and the physiological responses will be given. So this type of mechanism is called as a secondary regulatory mechanism or secondary messenger mechanism. But there are certain steroidal hormones which will directly cross the membrane because of its hydrophilic phobic nature. They will cross the membrane and they will act on the nucleus, and they will also act on the directly target on the genome activity of the nucleus. So this type of action is called as a secondary messenger mechanism, and most of the steroidal hormones will be directly primary messenger or the itself is acting on that. So this type of mechanism is called as a primary messenger mechanism. Primary messenger mechanism.